Good morning, everybody. My name is JP Cahalan, and you are tuning into the Final Mile XOI's podcast about the trades, technology, and how we help field service business supercharge their organization by focusing on technician-focused technology, allowing you guys to collect data and insights that really transform the experience and what you understand about your business, your customers, and how technicians are operating in certain situations. I am JP Cahalan. As I mentioned, I'm a process engineer over at XOI. I've been here for going on a decade, and I am super excited to be with Vinnie from Arista Air Conditioning out of New York. Vinnie is the VP of operations over there. I've known this guy for years. He's one of the best in the industry. Vinnie, thank you for being here. I'd love to open it up to you. Tell us a little bit about Arista, what you guys do, where you guys focus.
Thank you for the opportunity. Actually, this is my pleasure to jump on here. Anytime you ask me to do something, I kind of jump on it because you guys have always been so fantastic over the years. I work for Arista Air Conditioning in New York City. We are a premier contractor concentrating in service in New York City. Kind of staying in the weeds of things, constantly in a market that's constantly evolving, and the software has really, been a huge benefit to me and this company. So anything that I can do to kind of lend any kind of, feedback, I'd be, more than happy to do that, which is why when you asked me to handle this, I was ready to jump all over it for you.
I very much appreciate that. You guys have been, you guys are one of our earliest contractors to jump on XOI, and you guys have used this in a way. I think you guys have personally seen it differently, and it might be kind of your premier level of service in the ecosystem that you interact with. But you guys started out, I think you've been on XOI for at least 5 years. And as you kind of think about, today we're going to be talking about kind of the effect of technology on the technician, because, you look back 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of things to play with. Some people are still on pen and paper, and technician was out there doing it. Now we've kind of really brought a lot to the tech. As you think about how powerful technology has been, what do you think the biggest, let's call it the positive impact, has been for the technician specifically?
From a technician out, the crazy part is, I remember when we originally had brought you guys on, and I think your team looked at me like I was crazy because I said, my goal is to make sure that everybody has the costs that we do, and making that XOI, anything I could do to lend to get, more contractors involved in what, the improve operations that we have seen. And this technology has grown tentacles. So, I know we're going to concentrate on, the technician standpoint, but there's so many different things and facets that we have learned, and it really comes from where it started. I think, from a technician standpoint, I think really the biggest improvement that we have seen or benefit would be accessibility. I think the hardest thing in a world that has come to celebrate social distancing and being able to do things remote and just, the natural world of gaining efficiency, the person, the touch, the interaction has been negatively impacted. And I think that's something that no matter what you do, efficiency will bring that. I think once you start realizing how to do things distant and separate so that you can hit things faster and quicker, I think that, you're going to run into that, that inability to have that personal connection with technicians. With that, the communication is always, one of those things that you have to overcome. And I think that with XOI, one of the things that we have seen is our ability to get information and historical data to our technicians. And I think that, that umbrella of communications got so many different tentacles that it started with, okay, let's just record what we did for the external users so that when we finish something, our customers would know what we did. And what we learned was the more important piece to that was from an internal communication standpoint to fully understand what has to get done to get things done both, quicker and smarter. Mm-hmm. And I think they are linked, and XOI has been a very good conduit for the information to flow out, instantaneously. So I would think that, exposure and being able to work on a very intuitive system where you can get this, historical data from what we have done in any pieces of equipment or any account has been the hugest impact from a technical standpoint.
That's huge. Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was kind of, as I kind of thought about the questions, things we were going to talk about, I was going to lead into, hey, what's this done for kind of the customer? What's this done for the office internally? Because I'm in the camp that if you build a simple and valuable tool for a technician and you focus on that technician, other good things will happen. The customer's experience will be better. The office will get better information. It sounds like, and I know you guys were heavily focused, you guys put out some marketing stuff, you constantly do about your use of XOI. What has been for the office? It sounds like you guys have kind of more understood what's going on. Has there been any specificities where it's like, dude, our visibility to understand and see exactly what's happening here just transforms how we can operate because we know more? Is that a constant thing with you guys, or is that coming waves?
So that's one of the things for us. That's we weren't expecting, that when we originally signed from XOI. I think it's important to understand the why, right? We originally went to XOI just to put out a better product. I mean, that's simply what this was. This was, what can we do with our customer base to do something that others are not doing? And 5 years ago, that's what the site was. When we started going, what we didn't realize is the impact internally and the training opportunities, both from an internal to external, and being able to have that channel of communication instantaneous. And that's one of those pieces that I don't think that we saw originally. Where now, if there's some, understanding that needs to be done, providing you set up the productions properly, you can get a real sense, even if you're not technical, as to what's going on in this space. And to be honest, our customers get that as well, where the majority of what we do and the people that we deal with, they're not technically focused, and most of them just want to know what's being taken care of. But it really lended itself to being able to tell our story, and not have to have that back and forth, conversation that just takes time. And that's where you pick up the efficiency. So the answer to your question is, yeah, what we weren't expecting is the impact it was going to have for the awareness of what we actually do to those who are not in the element, being the field. And that has been like really amazing, from all different types, whether it be a service coordinator all the way up to our contract sales or installation sales that are not dialed in too much to the day-to-day and understand the technical side. They're able to look at something and be able to look at something and say, you know what, this is what this means. So if you think about like the impact to scheduling, understanding, what those hours and what they're doing, and it gives a level of empathy, to, and consideration to tasks that on paper look the same, right? All jobs look the same when you put it on paper. Things, once you start, putting it out there and say, these are the different challenges, those are the differentiators that may cost more time. So I think from a learning standpoint, from just an awareness, it has had a huge impact, both externally and internally.
That's huge. Yeah, I think when we, the ethos, Aaron, our CEO, very well. We want to solve the skilled trades gap. But I grew up in a family working at a factory. He did the same, and we had this big audacious goal. And I think that we focused there. But I think, to your point of the use of the word tentacles, that's where it's spreading into different places, and we're helping, to your point, service coordinators and people internally that may not have technical knowledge, but they're responsible for the engine to continue to go. Helping them better understand is obviously something I don't think we thought about. I think it was a byproduct of creating something that is easy for technicians and people like you guys who say, we're going to use this at its fullest capacity and we're going to do everything we can with it. And that's what comes out of it.
The wild thing about it is that if you really think about the efficiency side, a technician, 15 years ago, they'd be able to know at the job, but there were certain things that, they weren't aware of, right? Conditions, certain. Now they have the ability to take a look at what the job is, and on the way home, setting up their day, right? So it's one of those things that, it opened up questions before we got on site. Do we have this? Do we have that? I see it's in there. Do we make arrangements? And the efficiencies are going to come by accident, because, they're going to start planning by looking at what they have to do the following day from what the guy before him, if he wasn't the same technician, which unfortunately will happen from time to time, to get a better understanding of what the project is. And we're already seeing that, our average time to completion on some of these repairs get dwindled because the awareness is already being taken care of, before they get on the job. Not that, everyone kind of thinks about, I have to do this. And you talk about these types of repairs where, all right, I know on this repair, I got to do A to B to C to D, but there's a lot of things that are uncertainties because you're not familiar with either what the guy is recommending or, the different nuances inside the space that now that's being eliminated. Now it's I'm getting on, where am I going? What's my access? The conditions in the space, and it's all being planned. And what we are finding more buy-in is really the understanding of what their day is going to be. And that's when you really start finding, like, moving the needle a little bit inside of efficiency, because it's just the awareness, and it's that contact to something quickly, fast, and just, which speaks to efficiencies and saving money and time.
That's huge. Yeah, it's always been kind of our, at least my goal to say, hey, this is as people are collecting content and they're taking, and you guys are taking pictures and videos, and that's what people are leveraging, utilizing. How can it continue to grow after the fact when I'm off the job and set me up for the next, whether it be on a training aspect or whether it be understanding the site? I know you guys are, again, I've always said this, you guys are very much out of the box. You guys do things in a very unique way in how you approach things. I got word years ago that you guys were using the video content captured from XOI technicians to help in their growth plan as a tech, to help kind of review how they're viewing things, how they're seeing things. Has that, A, am I accurate in that? And B, what has been the receptiveness of your team and technicians particularly in using this to say, hey, let's kind of have a one-on-one and let's talk about how you're seeing the world and what you're doing on your calls?
So we have, over 100 technicians. And when we start talking about, and I started it, in this podcast, actually discussing about the world celebrating being separate, right? We want guys on jobs by certain times, and that's just the what you gain as far as efficiency and money, right? But the human contact and the awareness is what's missing. People talk about, the shop talk, or you talk about, conversations at the water cooler. What was painfully obvious is as we started disconnecting, albeit we knew they were getting the exposure, there was no one really outside of the person that they're working that specific day, which, although we would like for it to be, consistent all the time with the same guy, there was nothing that really tied into whether they were grasping and what they were getting out of each daily experience. So on that branch of communication and improved communication that XOI had improved in what we were doing, the thought was, why aren't we utilizing this for a recap of the day for guys that don't have the opportunity to make their own productions because they're with somebody else, right? So we want to be able to teach them how to do very, informative productions. And I think that's the first part of understanding your leverage with XOI, is knowing how to make good content. So we wanted them to learn it, but then we're like, no, wait a minute. Why aren't we having these guys give us, especially guys who are younger in development, right, the training aspect of it? Why aren't we utilizing the workflow connection and being able to pass that workflow off, immediately once finished, to validate what our younger guys are learning by the end of the day? We're talking about what they're retaining. Why aren't we doing this? And everyone kind of looked at each other for a second. I'm like, all right, well, are there specific questions that we could be asking these younger guys that we can see whether or not they're grasping? But more importantly, having them speak our language, using terminology. So what we started doing was like, let's do the question of the week. Before the end of this week, I'd like for you to go out and give us the sequence of operations on a humidifier, and please include all safeties. And what we were finding is that they were really excited to do them. These things are a little uncomfortable at first because you got to get past the fact that it's you talking into something, but it gives them direct contact with both supervision and management, right? So these things, it's like, as these generations start to go, you start feeling that in the hierarchy of things, it's very hard for a guy who's coming in to make direct contact to both supervision and above that to show their progress. So what we were finding was these videos that were coming out, trying to show off what they have and awareness to us to see their growth. So what we were finding, and that's that thing that I was talking about, like kind of organically happened was, all right, these guys want us to know where they're at. And it's the same part. We want to know where they're at because selfishly, we need to get them developed and moved on so we can get their billing rate where it needs to be and us take full benefit of it, right? So we're already investing in all this education. How is it impacting the younger I don't want to say younger, but less experienced generation. And that has been huge. It's been huge. And when you get a chance to see, a guy explain what he has done from a helper's perspective, all of a sudden you start realizing what they are actually retaining. And they're speaking the language, and they know at the end of the day, they have to give this. So they're both excited, but you find them paying attention a little bit more to the little things that they can add into their production. So it's been huge. Like really, it's been fantastic.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm getting chills over here, and I don't know if it's because it's drafty or whatever it is, but like hearing you talk about that and that approach, again, you guys are out of the box. It's super, super unique. And I love the fact that you're doing it. I love the fact that this is kind of, because again, I think, I had a mentor. I came from the construction manufacturing world. Like I had a mentor and I was pretty much told what to do all day. I got yelled at, and then you have your opportunities and right over your shoulder, and you're going to make sure that you know these things. To your point, because we have a skilled trades gap, because of social distancing, those moments aren't always there. And so how can I understand what exactly you're doing, how much you're retaining, and then allow you guys as an organization, as leadership, to say, all right, we need to focus here, we need to train here, we need to shift what we focus on as an organization as part of training. Has this, and I know we're people shortage in the trade, so I know this, everybody takes who they can get. Do you think allowing you guys to bring this into your world has said, okay, we can hire more on attitude than aptitude because we have a process where we can build our techs our way and better understand it? Not saying you couldn't do it before, but now there's just kind of an increased visibility into that where you feel like you can lean on that more?
Yeah, I think once, like for us, we do believe that if you speak the language of the industry, we have a start and a base. And if you are comfortable with understanding how, and you make a milestone of like, this is where you're, because we're all racing. Every contractor is out there racing. They're racing against time, weather, assets, whatever hurdles are there. When it comes to the manpower piece, the hardest part about that is the planning, right? So as you start seeing growth, any really great talent is not going to be made available to you. So you basically have to create your own talent. Good talent stays with good companies. That's just what it is. And most great talent and most great companies understand that. And the connection to that is, okay, how do we take technician A and make 5 more technician A's? How do you identify who's your top talent and who do you want to emulate them? And what we were finding is that it shows effort, right? It shows your ability to communicate. And for people who work well or just, overall good people, there's a place for everyone in this industry. But when you're running that race, you need to see where you're at. And I say this all the time to my people, eliminate blind spots. What don't you know? I don't care what you know. I want to know what you don't know. right? Because what you don't know will stay like that until someone, that being able to be vulnerable and saying, you know what, I don't know this, and creating that culture of saying, you know what, good for you to identify what you don't know. But some of that happens by accident. And what we end up seeing by looking at these productions, like, you were saying this, what did you mean by that? You said this, how did you validate that? And you start getting into this conversation that if your milestone is, by the beginning of year X, you're going to be on your one in a vehicle, but there's certain things that we have to validate so that you can work safely and efficiently out there, then this is a good way that we found to do it, right? Getting a snapshot into seeing what the progress is and making sure that those who are working within our platform are retaining what we're investing in them. It's not cheap, to train, but what if you had the ability to weed out the differentiator? What if you had the ability to find those who are doing it at a whole different level, and those that are not showing the effort, so that you can help one another, not waste time, right? And that is where you can't measure effort by a paycheck. You can't measure effort by a work order, and you can't measure whether or not you're retaining something just because on the work order it says that something was completed. What if I told you that there's an avenue to do all of it? And by eliminating your blind spot and being able to look at effort and ability and be able to say, okay, who are my diamonds? Who are my diamonds? Who are the guys, or women that are looking at it or coming up in the industry that are knocking the doors down? You're going to see by the interest, and you're going to see by how consistently they put their message out so that they can show what they're doing by just doing certain things inside a process, as long as you understand what the end goal is. If you understand the end goal, these tools just take you to a whole nother level. And that's what we've really enjoyed in that process. It's been fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And it gets another level of just exposure and accountability and a direct contact for someone to show their drive. It's been fantastic.
That's huge, man. I mean, just hearing you talk about it makes total sense. It's like you can't really understand it, but what if there's a way that you can? And that's what you guys produce. As you think, you've said the word production quite a few times. And I know, so there's some people out probably in this world that are like, oh, production, he's talking about video content. And in my mind, as you're saying that, I'm like, these technicians are doing a production every single day on every call, everywhere in the world, XOI or not, because they are talking to people and having a moment in time where they are having to explain and communicate this. As you have seen this technology, have you seen with the younger generation, let's focus in on not the less experienced, but that younger generation who's familiar with TikTok and things that they're recording themselves, do you see that generation is gravitating to this technology because it's something they're familiar with? They're like, oh, this is what I use in my day in, day out life of how I communicate anyway. I think it's fantastic. Has that been something that you've seen with the younger techs that come in?
I think it's twofold. I think, yes, I think the younger generation are very much more aware and comfortable with technology. But I also realized that as they became comfortable with technology, similar to what we've been speaking through this whole time, the face-to-face interaction has declined. So a lot of their technology is going through, some platform, whether it be TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever, they're doing at this time. I don't have the time to jump into that, but I will say that what was lost was their ability to communicate effectively. And, another thing about this is this gets them ready for when, a customer's coming up, they're doing these productions. The interaction we're seeing is also, we want them talking about themselves. We talk about building brands, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone carries a brand. We had an exercise one time, and, I did a PowerPoint with the Manpower, and I started putting up all these, international labels, whether it be, McDonald's and BMW or whatever it is. And we were just showing just labels and brands. And then we were talking about both level and quality that are associated with those brands and how that fits into your brand as a person, as a technician, and what do you want that brand to be? And that was one of those things when they're going out and they're doing these productions. The productions for me is not just a work order. The production to me is, how did you leave the space? How did you leave the atmosphere? How did you leave the customer? That's all what this is about. I mean, you could say whatever, and some look at that and say, okay, what do I want to be remembered for when I leave this call? What is it? We talk about changing atmosphere. The ability to be able to communicate what you've done in an effective way where the customer says, you know what? I got it. And more importantly, I'm being taken care of. You're not going to make everybody happy, but if people feel as if you're taking care of them, that's really the only thing that we're shooting for in service, right? By doing these productions, these guys are saying, this is how I left your space. You're going to be taken care of. This is linked to whatever action item that we have. And similar from a personal development standpoint that we were touching on, this is what I did for you today. And that is one of those things that, you can't measure it, right? But you can measure it in the way that they're feeling. You can measure it in when you're getting together, how people are familiar with somebody by what they're doing. When you see the person walk in and you somehow become connected with that person because you've been sitting there watching what they're doing, so, I think that it's a broad, topic as far as whether or not you're comfortable because you normally communicate through social platforms. But I think in a sense, you're building your own social platform and they're comfortable with that. But the younger generation, and I keep using younger, but the newer generation, as they're going up, I think there's a loss in being able to talk on the phone, to talk one-on-one. And I think there's a lack of confidence in that. So this gives them the ability to gain the confidence to say things the way they need to do. And then when, if approached, they already have that production in their head that when they're communicating to somebody, what that needs to sound like, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Makes total sense. You're building soft skills with those that may not have them, giving them the confidence, allowing them to grow, to be able to give the best customer experience possible. And to your point, make sure they're taken care of, leave the space, leave the atmosphere, leave the customer in a good place, no matter what it is. When people ask me, and hey, I got friends in New York, they're like, hey, who should I use? Your guys' name always comes on top of the list. I think it's because of all the things that you have said today. You guys are premier in what you're doing, I think, across the country. And I think it's super powerful the way you approach things. I'm going to ask you two final questions. The next one is this, because I always like to look towards the future. I want to see where things can go. As you think about the next 5 years, what do you, or where would you like to see technology go to help the technician, or to help the service coordinator, or to help Arista or the customer grow? I mean, what do you think is the thing that needs to happen?
I think, when you have an intuitive platform, such as XOI, and we have other, types of technology that, had increased our brand. I think, for us, especially the biggest challenge that's going in the service industry is just awareness. And, for where we're headed, I think that, there's always going to be, features that, but it's really keeping things intuitive, keeping in line with, all right, how do we get this message out as simple as possible? Not overcomplicating things as we start, this generation right now. If you really think about what we are, we still have, you have the baby boomers and the tail end that are actually leaving the industry. And there is a huge gap there, a very huge gap. And, there's the way, if you look around, you do the research on some of these generational gaps and being able to communicate with one or the other, we've got so many different types of personalities that are inside of the trade. And what I really want to concentrate is, what are we losing? What are we losing when all these skilled technicians that we've invested has now left the marketplace. And as far as, understanding the levels and the awareness, what we're working on right now is how do we keep that content, and what don't we know, right? What do we don't know until it's gone? And the older generation that have so much to offer are things that there is so much that's leaving at the same time, that I think if you don't really take a look at what your potential blind spot is from losing, I think that it'll be lost forever. And the connection between those generations and being able to keep them in-house longer is something we all should be looking at. How do you keep your talent in-house longer, and how can technology do that? We're currently working on something right now to give or keep this remote access to be working on technician development, with the only hope of keeping this talent in the industry one more year. And what I mean by that is just every day is a blessing to keep this younger talent in here as you bridge the gap. And everyone's going to need time to bridge the gap. You had 5 years ago, they were talking about being, 33% labor shortage for what you need. And I think grew exponentially once the pandemic hit. So really what we're looking for is how do we use this technology to keep that talent in-house? Where do we go to store it? How does that happen? How do we create that connection? How do we keep the connection and that conduit strong for years to come? So what I'm looking for, XOI, is just stay on top of the game. You guys have always been fantastic. I know, and I thank you for all the kind words that you had said today, but I'm going to say flat out that you guys have always been a partner, and I feel like you guys do listen. It's more than just content. It's a partnership, and know that it is my goal for everyone to deal with XOI, because if my costs are there, their costs are there. And if the quality of work is there, it's a win-win. And we've only talked about technician development. I could talk your ear off for a day and what you guys have been able to do. So I really appreciate the opportunity getting on here and having a conversation, because, I feel like there's so much to offer with this platform. So I just wanted to formally say thank you to you and your team.
Well, of course, man, I appreciate that. I do. And I'm going to tell you this, and I know this is going to be recorded and other people are going to hear it, but this is more for you and me when I'm coming on site. Talking about those blind spots, you guys are part of the Journeyman platform and all that. I think I can help you with that, because I think there's an opportunity, and I've been running data. Because your techs are taking pictures of data plates, I know the makes and the models that they work on. If you gave me a list of the people that are going to leave in the next 2 years, I could tell you, here are the common things they work on, how often they work on it. So this is the gap. In particular, this model that we need to fill and better understand, because they work on this 27% of the time. It's not the end all be all, but it's data that we did not have before that can help us better understand and avoid the blind spot.
John, you have keywords, right? You have keywords inside that at the end of the day, that if someone really wanted to know what are some of the common things that each one of our technicians do from a day-to-day basis, you can give a certain amount of time and productions that are associated with those keywords. So we're already working on that type of stuff. And I think that when you start going through, I think that, if everybody knows where their blind spots are, keep looking at them through a lens now that has been given to you by XOI and their platform. You got the platform, you got the lens, you got the historical data that, if done properly, you can leverage. And it's been huge, both internally and externally, as it relates to gain and efficiency, development, whatever you want to do. And it's been absolutely fantastic. And the ride has been truly joyful for what we're doing. There is not one negative thing or one facet that tentacle we were talking about hasn't touched with XOI and our operations team.
Dude, I cannot thank you enough for those kind words. I'm going to leave you with this last question. You can wax eloquently on it, or you can answer it straightforward, but you got to give me one. If I told you that you had to have one of these two scenarios and you couldn't give it away, you couldn't sell it, would you rather have, and to take care of and raise, one horse-sized duck, or 10 duck-sized horses?
I'd have to say horse. I would have to say, what was it? One horse-sized duck?
One horse-sized duck or 10 duck-sized horses? It's like a riddle and all question at the same time.
I will honestly say that I don't have time to clean up after my children at this point. So I would literally say if I can have one of anything as opposed to 10 of anything, I'm looking to get my square footage down. So I'd go with the option number one. That's what I would do. I would definitely say if I have to only clean up after one thing, albeit larger than the 10, then I'd go for it. That's where I'm at. Time. I don't have the time. That's for sure.
And I love how you brought in square footage into the whole mix. I'm going horse-sized duck as well, because you live in New York, I live in Chicago. Think about what we can do with that thing. I can ride on that to fly places. I can walk it through the park, and I can put that thing on the water and cruise across the Navy Pier. Like, I'm looking at it from all angles. Like Vince Vaughn, I'm going to take Chicago by land, air, and sea.
Well, if you do anything
Dude.
right, you'll have an admission ticket that you're selling for, a certain amount to just walk it down the street. I think that would be the most entertaining part of it, is just seeing people's reaction to such a thing.
That's the truth, man. Well, Vinny, you know what I think of. You know what I think of your group. I cannot thank you enough for the time you spent today. I think this has been, for me, it's been educational and enlightening, which is what I want out of every time that I'm kind of talking to people about technology, the trades, and just what people are doing in the space. So thank you so much, my friend. I very much appreciate it. And for all of you out there, very much appreciate y'all listening to the Final Mile, and catch us again next time when we come back. Y'all take care.
Take care.